I actually came from a wedding in Niagara about, oh, that's backwards. There we go. I came from a wedding in Niagara Falls earlier today. My best friend got married. And last night, I found out that I was doing this presentation. So my apologies in advance if the presentation isn't super fancy, but this is just a quick overview of my life. I started at the Guelph Mercury as a paper boy. I went to the University of Guelph. I was a dishwasher there for a few years. I started with TSC stores. That was my first real job. And just scrolling through it, like somebody going from this, I dropped out of high school in grade 10. And I had, around the landscaper Fastenal area of my life, I was pretty worried I was going in the wrong direction because I was literally selling nuts and bolts. And that's not something that I was super passionate about. I didn't wake up in the morning saying, oh my goodness, I want to sell nuts that hold this amazing place together. That wasn't my jam. But through the years, I slowly followed what I was interested in, and kind of to Martha's point, I was always trying to pursue what I was interested in, and I was always trying to pursue what I enjoyed. And that's, to echo your point, Martha, it's taken me 16 years to learn this. That if you think of your job and career as an education you get paid for, think about what you want to learn, then do that. That's my biggest advice to anybody in this room. If anybody is struggling with what they want to do with their lives, if you're unhappy, you're going home on Friday night and Sunday comes along and you're feeling the blues, think about what you want to learn and try and find a way to pivot towards that. I started as a paperboy, dishwasher, dropout, and now I'm helping hire candidates for Canada's fastest and most secure cryptocurrency digital asset organization. If you asked the 16-year-old Martin what he was going to do, clearly I had no idea that was going to happen because we didn't even have cell phones at that time. So, as far as some of the things that you can learn or some of the lessons that I've learned, planning ahead, also known as the story from this morning, when I tried on a suit that doesn't fit anymore because I didn't plan ahead for my best friend's wedding. So I wore black jeans to my best friend's wedding, which was kind of funny, and I've got some planning to do myself because I've got a wedding in September. So, as far as planning ahead, a lot of times startups that I've seen end up not hiring a lot of people on their people experience team or their HR teams. We're a company of 150 now. 4 months ago, we were 40 people. I was their 40th employee. And they knew they were going to be probably about 230, 250 people by the end of June this year. And the one thing that I asked them when I was on the interview is like, how big is your human resources and people experience team going to be? And they said, we're probably going to have about 10 people. And that's what we have right now. Typically, from other startups that I've seen, only have like one person doing recruiting and one person doing human resources. And that doesn't account for anything. That leaves a lot of people, asking questions that they can't really get answers to. And I would encourage any organization to sort of plan ahead for the growth that they have so the people working for your companies are getting the right experience, the best experience that they can have. Another lesson I've learned, I'm just gonna flip this around, okay. Mentorship. So over the years, I've had mentors, and I learned pretty late in life that I can reach out to people. Like, I think before I became a recruiter, I was like, I can only add you to LinkedIn if I've met you in person. That's no longer the case. If I see something in your headline, I click, yes, let's connect. I want to talk to you. So if you can find mentors outside of your normal circle, if you can find mentors that don't work with you or colleagues, go for that. Another thing that I found really useful was realizing the fact that here's someone I admire. They're doing really well in their organization, but they're doing X, Y, Z wrong, and I disagree with that. Take that as a lesson from them. They can still be your mentor, but also try and keep your own personal values in play. As far as getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. My first tech job was Wrangle.io. They had a diversity and inclusion group, and it was open to everybody in the organization, but it was typically the women in the organization, and they were just having meetings and talking about how to further the diversity and inclusion initiatives at that company. They've started a code school for women called the Bridge program. It's free to women and anyone can join. And that's a really amazing initiative that came out of that. But going to that meeting for the very first time was extremely uncomfortable for me. I'm a straight white male, and there's a room of women here, and how do I elevate, or how do I stand back and listen to the conversation? And this is very new for me because I used to sell nuts and bolts for 6 years. I used to walk through manufacturing facilities, and there'd be Playboy posters on the walls, and everything I was hearing was nothing but toxic masculinity. And that's carried over into the tech scene. And it's been a really interesting and humbling journey for me to kind of get involved in these organizations, make space, and learn things. And that's where Unbiasify came out from. It's just a simple app that you can download into your, any HR people in here? I'm the only person. So, tell your HR people in your organizations that Unbiasify exists. It's a fantastic tool, and it's open source. So if you have developers within any of your companies that are interested in helping this project along, I'd gladly appreciate it. I was at a conference in San Jose last week, 2 weeks ago, I think, and it was Diana Chapman who said something that really resonated with me that I wanted to leave with you. And it's, where am I now? Am I above the line or am I below the line? And I don't want to go on for too much longer, but essentially you can engage every situation in your life and ask yourself, where am I now? Am I above the line or am I below the line? And below the line is looking at a situation from a point of I can't, I shouldn't, this isn't, very negative aspects. Or you can be above the line and say, okay, this is a really frustrating situation. How can I understand the other person sitting across from me? How can we get to a mutually beneficial agreement in some way, shape, or form? So asking myself in tough times, it's been a very mindful situation for me to just sit back and say, where am I right now? And hopefully that resonates with you. I would highly encourage you to check out more of Diana Chapman's work. Oh no! Oh, I knew this. In the back of my mind, I'm like, emojis never work. There's some fancy links. If you follow me on Twitter, at @1HAUCK, I've got links to Unbiasify. If you're interested in digital assets and cryptocurrency, there's a referral code that I can share with all of you. And if you're interested in jobs, we're hiring like 100 people in 3 months, so by all means, feel free to message me on LinkedIn. Thank you for your time.
All right, any questions? Wow, eager.
Well, I think a lot of us are growing tech companies, just hiring a couple at a time. When do you think is an appropriate time to start bringing in some HR professionals?
ASAP. So I think as soon as possible, really. I mean, if you're a 5-person organization and you plan to get to 10 people by the end of the year, that's 5 more people that are going to have a bunch of questions for you. And a lot of things in the tech space are uncontrollable in the sense that, like, that investor meeting went super well, and now we have $5 million worth of investment, and we can hire 20 people. And then you get busy hiring those 20 people, and you don't have an HR or talent person in place. That can get really messy really quick. So as soon as possible, that would be my recommendation.
What would be the top 1, 2, or 3 questions that you would like to ask a talent person before you hire them for your startup? That you know they're going to follow the values, the principles of your company, they're going to hire the right people. What would those questions be on an interview, for example?
So overall, the biggest indicator of performance on the job is some form of a assignment or test. So as much as questions are good, you know, leading back to like the whole Unbiasify thing, we're flawed as humans to make any sort of judgment. There's a familiarity bias, there's 16 different categorized biases out there. The one thing that you can do in any interview, doesn't necessarily have to be for a talent person, is give them a project related to whatever it is that the position would do, so you can judge people based on their work, not based on how the conversation went. Because just because someone isn't overly extroverted just because somebody isn't super social or they didn't say the right thing doesn't necessarily have any bearing on whether they can get the job done. So I would lean back to create a test for every candidate. So if you're hiring developers, create a development test. If you're hiring a UX UI designer, ask them what they would change with the UX and the UI and the design of your website or whatever. For talent people specifically, I would say, here's the top 3 roles that my company is hiring for. Which candidates would you recommend and why? And those answers can go 20 minutes long, those answers can be 1 minute long, it really depends on the candidate.